Some years back, I did an end-to-end hike of the Vermont Long Trail, which runs from the Vermont and Massachusetts border in the south to the border shared by Vermont and Quebec in the north. The trail is a little more than 270 miles, and it took a little less than 3 weeks. Here's a cocksure photo from day one, and then one closer to the end that shows what the equivalent of 10 marathons in 20 days with 40 pounds on one's back does to a fella's psyche. Well, hikers are much like us camera types in that we regularly sat around campfires at night talking about gear. And while I had done a fair few day hikes, I hadn't done many overnighters, so I was most definitely a noob without much to say on the long-term efficacy of my thru-hiking kit. But about a week in at one of these gear gabs, I got asked point blank what piece of equipment was my best investment. Partly because I was surly and blistered with 200 or so miles left to shamble, but mostly because it was true. I said, the best $3 I spent was on this. And I held up the bug net that I bought at Walmart the day before starting my journey. This exchange was, coincidentally, what prompted my compatriots to dub me my trail name Best $3 and to mock me incessantly for the next 100 miles. Hey, if you ever go to the offices of the Green Mountain Club and read the trail journals from 2012, you may just discover a few of my rants in there. Long story short, it's not always the most expensive gear that brings a person the most utility or joy, and that leads me to the subject of today's video, which is the Canon PowerShot G2 that I recently found at my local thrift shop for, you guessed it, $3. By spec, this camera isn't especially impressive. Here, let me prove it to you. It's a 4 megapixel 1/1/8 inch charge-coupled device sensor, CCD. The 35mm film equivalent focal range is 35 to 102, it's a zoom. Aperture runs from f2 to f8. The max shutter speed is 1/1000th of a second, and it supports ISO 50 through 400, and it has an auto ISO function that I think runs from 50 to 100. But hold up now, let me tell you a few of the bits and pieces that I really dig. Number 1, it uses the same battery and storage, CF cards, as my 5D Classic. Consequently, one can shoot for days with one battery and a 4GB card. Number 2, it can shoot RAW. In a related story, with Photoshop's new Super Resolution feature, those 4 megapixel files can be sized up quite nicely. Number 3, it has a top screen that shows your settings, and since it can shoot in all the classics like auto, manual, aperture priority, shutter priority, and program, seeing your settings is darn useful. Number 4, you can turn the flash off, and it stays off when you restart the camera. My film point-and-shoot friends will know why this is a big deal. Number 5, it has an optical viewfinder and a serviceable autofocus. Okay, let's look at a few snaps, shall we? You know, this camera scratches many of the same itches as my point-and-shoot film cameras. Here, check out the Canon Auto Boy and the Minolta Talker, both of which may be the subject of later videos. They're similar in size, autofocus quality, OVF size, build quality, shutter speeds, etc. And while I feel like a true hipster using the Auto Boy or the Talker, with the G2 I get a reasonably similar point-and-shoot experience. Plus I get my images without the expense and wait for my local film lab to process and scan my next great catastrophe. Also, I feel like it's worth mentioning again that this has a CCD sensor. I really like the look, especially the black and whites. Kinda reminds me of the files from my old Leica M8. Look, I'm not going to try to convince you that this camera is better than or even comparable to a Leica M8 or a Ricoh GR3.
This video is not sponsored by Sparesquares.
It's not. The screen is laughable, the usable ISO range is severely limited, the sensor's tiny, and you will not get much bokeh, even at f2. But what it is a ton of fun for next to no money. So if the metric is joy extracted per dollar, the Canon PowerShot G2 is unquestionably the best $3 I've spent on gear in the last several years. Perhaps you've noticed, film point-and-shoots are hot right now. So hot locally that they've largely disappeared from the shelves of my neighborhood thrift shops. In a related story, there are a lot more $50 to $100 point-and-shoots appearing on my local Craigslist. You don't have to be Sherwood Holmes to sort out this conundrum. Look, I don't expect digital point-and-shoots to gather the same hipster momentum as their filmic forebears, but I do perceive this to be an opportunity to zig while others zag. So yeah, if you're combing the thrift shops for a Contax T2 or a Polaroid SX70, and you stumble across what was once a solid digital point-and-shoot, like the Canon PowerShot G2, I do recommend giving it a good hard look. This is supposed to be fun, right? Okay, that's it for now. Happy shooting and have a great day.